Hey, my name's Christian Crowder. I've been into cryptocurrency mining for the past 3 years now, and started with just one little computer in a garage. I was living in my dad's house at the time, and built it to now, several thousand GPUs running in shipping containers. So building it into one of the larger data centers, at least in my area. These were some of the early rigs I was making. They were 7 GPU rigs. They worked decently. The biggest problem is they depended on risers, which were just really inconsistent, tended to fail a lot. Really had no clue what I was doing, was blowing up power supplies left and right, using just the wrong wire, just doing a lot of things wrong. But it's all right. I was learning, I was figuring it out. So those were some of the first rigs I got into. I had a lot of fun building those. I was building them just cheap as possible. Then I started getting into like, okay, I need to buy stuff, with new materials, so I can really scale it up and put out lots of these. And so, I was building it out of my dad's garage, building it in these rigs bought off of Amazon. Then I started getting into more auction type computers, things I could buy cheaply, but I could buy them by the hundreds. There's a little rigged up air cooling system. The garage was about to catch fire and burn down at my dad's house. And so, yeah, I was clearing out some space, trying to fit more and more GPUs there. The local Sears was going out of business, so I went there and I bought a bunch of their racking, got it loaded up in my brother's truck, and hauled it home because I was like, well, I think I got all my racking for it was like $100 for like hundreds of feet of racking. The wiring box at my dad's house was way, I think it had like a 50 amp main breaker, so that quickly had to be ripped out, and I totally rewired that. Yeah, I was buying computers at auctions, filled up big old trucks, box trucks. I would just buy hundreds at a time because you could get them $20-30 a piece, and I'd take them home because, yeah, you could build a 7 GPU rig for several $100, or you could get one of these for like 30, and then you'd have 4 GPUs. And so, price per GPU to support one, it was a very scalable, cost-effective solution. So then I started building out to the property I'm at now, moving into shipping containers. Really, yeah, just the whole principle was, all right, I'll make it like a floating floor data center. I'm gonna pick up all these shipping containers, cut the floorboards out, haul them out so I can suck in air from the bottom and exhaust out the top. So learn to use a cutting torch, and you can see there that I'm just cutting away. Oh yeah. I almost got in trouble with those a few times. But it was a great learning experience, really learned a ton. So got the first wiring set up, got all my boxes in place. My little brother and my brother-in-law and friends had a lot of help from them. We put in all the posts. I worked with like the local utility and the local power company, getting instruction for them on how the heck do I set up all this. I learned a lot of it off of YouTube. These some of the early rigs I made where I was really just flying by the seat of my pants on so many of these. So, but once we got that container filled up, it was starting to look something like this, where you just had rows and rows and rows of these machines, one upside, right upside, and the other upside down, just so I could cram as many GPUs between them, and they'd like share a power supply. So we just kept building. It just wasn't long after we put the first container down that we were running out of room in it, and so we started getting a second container and a third container, and it just is something that kind of grew out of control. I mean, as in control as I could make it. So there we put down the next container, and we have it going. I got a little better with my design as I went. In most cases, this was not one of those cases. This container we wound up making a storage container. We'd have shipments, boxes of just hundreds of GPUs coming in at a time. That would just get dropped off at my dad's house, and then I'd take those and transport them to the site we're at because it was kind of remote. It was hard for shipping companies to find, so often I would just get hundreds of GPUs shipped in, then I'd go pick them up in my truck and drive them out here. Pretty soon we blew up the transformer actually on the pole, and so we had to go to a 3-phase setup. So it took several months of not negotiating, but really working with the engineers at our local utility till they basically worked together a plan on how we were going to come out and put a transformer down. And in that time, I just learned everything I could about, what size conduit I would need, and I rented a trencher, hauled it out there, started just grinding through all the ground, laying down trench to every spot the container would be and where I planned to put containers, just so I could have electrical infrastructure from this 750 kVA transformer they wound up putting down. So there you can see a bunch of conduit going in. There's a whole lot of paperwork, a whole lot of talking with different buddies of mine. We did most of the work ourselves. We did hire some guys to do the concrete work because that was just like, I have no experience with concrete, whatever. It was something I thought I might try to learn really quick, like I did everything else in the process. But there was just too much riding on it to mess it up. So I just paid some guys and just got it done. So this whole time, that we're juggling all these infrastructure improvements to add more containers to the mix, we're getting new shipments of GPUs coming in, and we're just building these rigs fast as we can and just putting them down. So it was a pretty hectic, exciting time to just getting work done, just throwing rigs down. I bought, this electrical disconnect. I would just find deals on everything. The first electrical disconnect that I substituted for the original one was a 600 amp disconnect. Normally several $1,000s to buy. I wound up getting this disconnect for like $200 off of a Craigslist buy somewhere, some guy. And so that's kind of the thing that really helped me get started, is I would just find really cheap, cost-effective ways of doing things that a lot of people probably don't typically think of. So then I started, getting a little more sophisticated, with my motherboards, and really, a lot of it was that equipment didn't exist at the time, so you couldn't buy a custom-built 6 GPU motherboard. So I got into that. And then, it was time. We're just adding a third container. We decided, maybe just setting it on cinder blocks isn't the most secure thing. So we actually poured concrete piers and embedded steel I-beams in them and welded the containers down to those I-beams, so they wouldn't blow over. There were some concerns from some people that might be an issue. So the whole time we're improving our process, not just at the rigs, but at the containers and how we cut them up, how we cool them, how we put the racking in, just an unfathomable amount of details that you just pick up and learn. I knew very little about network admin stuff, and you just had to learn as you went. So that's what we did. So really exciting adventure. There's no way for me to cover it all in one video, but that's what I'm gonna be doing with my channel, is just kind of going over all the lessons learned. I definitely messed up a bunch. I've definitely made a lot of bad decisions when it came to building this out. Things that I could have definitely done better, but that's what I hope to do with this channel, is I hope to save you some of that experience. Hopefully you can do things right the first time, learn a little bit from me. Not that, I have all the answers, but I definitely can tell you plenty of things not to do and several things to do. So stick around.